The battlefield burned with fire and smoke. Broken ships floated in the void like dead husks. Once, the alien Titan had marched at the front of armies that stretched across the stars. His kind had called him their champion, their shield, their executioner. Now those same voices had turned cold, calling him traitor, outcast, forsaken. His armor, once polished with honor, was cracked and scorched. His glowing eyes scanned the battlefield where silence replaced the roar of war. No ally stood beside him, only the dead, and the distant lights of a human fleet moving cautiously through the wreckage. He had been left behind. His people had betrayed him, sealing their escape routes and abandoning him to die in the chaos. The Titan had not fallen because of weakness, but because he had questioned them. He had seen the way his kind crushed weaker races, and he had asked if it was right. For that, they had turned on him. Betrayal tasted worse than fire. For the first time in centuries, he was alone, stripped of duty, stripped of belonging. His claws tightened as sparks flickered across his broken armor. The humans saw him first as a threat. Their sensors picked up his massive frame drifting among the ruins. Their officers shouted warnings. Weapons locked onto him, and targeting lines burned across his chest. He made no move to resist. He could have torn apart their ships if he wanted. Even damaged, his power dwarfed theirs. But instead, he floated still, a giant shadow waiting for judgment. It confused them. No warrior of his kind ever bowed to weakness. Yet here was their Titan, silent in surrender. On the human flagship, Captain Alara studied the image of the alien Titan. His teeth gleamed like daggers, his eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and his body looked like a weapon forged from living metal. Every instinct screamed danger. Yet she noticed something strange. He was not attacking. She ordered her fleet to hold fire. Her crew gasped. Some whispered that she was risking all their lives. But she was curious. Why would a creature bred for war stand still before fragile humans? The Titan drifted closer until the docking bays drew him in. His feet touched human metal for the first time. Soldiers raised rifles, sweat dripping down their brows as the towering figure entered their ship. The Titan bent his head so it would not scrape the ceiling. Every step shook the floor. His voice, when it came, was deep and heavy like rolling thunder. He did not speak their language, but he tried. The words came broken, but the meaning was clear. He had been abandoned. The humans did not trust him. Whispers spread through the crew. They feared he was a trick, a spy, a weapon set loose. But the captain saw something in his posture. In the slow way his hands remained open. In the cracks of his armor where sparks showed weakness. This was not a trap. This was a plea. For the first time, the Titan's glowing eyes dimmed with something other than rage. They dimmed with grief. The days that followed were tense. The Titan stayed locked in containment while humans studied him. He said little, but when he did, he told them of betrayal. He spoke of how his people had abandoned him, not for failing in battle, but for doubting their cruelty. His voice shook when he remembered the faces of those who had once called him brother. Humanity listened with suspicion, but some began to feel pity. He was a monster, yes, but he was also alone. One night, alarms blared through the human fleet. Enemy raiders swept from the shadows, hungry for human blood. The humans scrambled to defend themselves, but their ships were weak compared to the sudden storm. Blasts shook the hull, corridors filled with smoke. In the chaos, the Titan rose. He smashed through containment with one strike. Soldiers aimed their weapons, but he did not attack them. He charged past, his roar shaking the walls, his massive body hurling itself into the firestorm outside. The humans watched in awe as the Titan fought the raiders. His claws tore ships apart. His broken armor absorbed the fire. He moved with fury and purpose, not for his people, not for conquest, but for those who had shown him mercy when they could have killed him. For the first time, his rage served another cause. He fought not as a weapon of cruelty, but as a shield. When the last raider ship broke and drifted away, silence fell. Smoke curled across the void. The Titan, scarred and glowing, returned to the human fleet. He did not kneel, he did not bow. But his eyes burned with a new light. One humans recognized, the light of loyalty. They had given him no reason to fight, yet he had chosen them. Once forsaken, the alien Titan had taken his first step toward something greater. The human crew struggled to understand what had happened. Minutes before, they had feared the Titan might destroy them. Now he had saved their lives. The docking bay shook as the Titan returned, his body glowing with fresh wounds. Smoke rose from the cracks in his armor. Sparks hissed and faded, but his stance was unbroken. He had fought like a storm-given flesh. The human soldiers lowered their rifles, some in awe, others in fear. None dared step forward until Captain Alara did. She stood before him, her small figure almost hidden beneath his shadow. Her voice was calm, steady. She asked why he fought for them when he owed them nothing. The Titan tilted his head, searching for words. His language was broken, each word sounding like stone grinding against stone. They left me. You did not. I fight. Because I choose. His voice rumbled through the chamber. That was the first time the crew realized he was not a beast, but something more, a warrior with a will of his own. Whispers spread across the fleet. Some humans said he could not be trusted. Others argued he had already proven himself. For Alara, the answer was not simple. She had seen his strength, enough to tear their fleet apart in hours. Yet she had also seen restraint. When he fought the raiders, every strike had been aimed outward. Not once had his claws turned toward them. That choice spoke louder than any oath. Days passed as the Titan stayed among them. He never asked for food, never rested the way humans did. Instead, he remained near the viewing ports, staring at the endless stars. Some crew members grew curious. They approached him carefully, asking questions. Though his words were clumsy, he tried to answer. He told them of his kind, of vast empires built on fear, of worlds burned when they refused to kneel. His people saw weakness as disease, mercy as shame. He had dared to question, and for that, he was thrown away like broken steel. The more the humans listened, the more they began to see him differently. He was still terrifying, still a creature of war, but beneath that, there was a wound deeper than his broken armor. Betrayal had cut him in ways no blade could. And in that wound, something unexpected grew, the faintest spark of trust. Yet not everyone welcomed him. Officers gathered in secret meetings, warning that keeping the Titan on board was a risk. They feared he might turn against them when the moment was right. Some whispered that he should be cast into the void before it was too late. Alara knew the fear was real, but she also knew something else. Without the Titan, they would already be dead. He had saved them once. She believed he would do it again. That chance came sooner than expected. A distress call echoed across the comms, weak and broken. A human colony was under attack, its defenses crumbling. The fleet debated whether to risk helping, for their strength was low and repairs were unfinished. As they argued, the Titan rose. His voice shook the chamber. Go. Fight. I will stand with you. His glowing eyes burned with certainty. The humans stared at him, unsure whether to believe. But Alara did. She gave the order to set course for the colony. When they arrived, the scene was grim. Enemy warships circled the human world like vultures. Flames lit the sky as cities burned below. The fleet was too small to face the enemy head-on. Fear filled the crew, but the Titan stepped forward. He entered a human ship too small for his frame, bending his body to fit. With every step, metal groaned. When the engines roared, the ship became a weapon in his hands. The battle that followed was like nothing the humans had ever seen. The Titan hurled himself into the heart of the enemy, tearing through their vessels with claws and raw strength. His fury was not blind, it was precise, aimed at protecting the colony. Human ships followed in his wake, striking where he tore holes in enemy lines. For the first time, humans and the alien Titan fought as one. When the battle ended, the colony was scarred but alive. Smoke drifted through the sky, but survivors cheered as human ships descended. Among them, they saw the Titan, towering in the wreckage, his body blazing with faint light. He stood not as a conqueror, but as a guardian. For the first time in his life, he was not forsaken. He was needed. And that changed everything. The colony lay in ruins, but it still breathed. Human survivors gathered in the open square, staring in awe at the giant who had fought for them. Children clung to their parents, pointing at the Titan with wide eyes, half in fear and half in wonder. Soldiers whispered that they had never seen such power stand on their side. To the colonists, the Titan was not just an alien, they saw him as a miracle carved from nightmare, a monster that had chosen to fight for them instead of against them. Captain Alara watched the Titan from the ramp of her ship. He stood in silence, his massive frame blackened with burns, his armor cracked even deeper than before. He was wounded, yet he did not stumble. His glowing eyes scanned the colony, and when they landed on the humans, something softened. It was not kindness in the way they knew it, but it was something close in understanding that he no longer stood alone in the galaxy. The fleet began repairs, both for themselves and for the colony. Supplies were low, morale even lower. Yet the presence of the Titan gave strength where words could not. Workers labored faster, soldiers stood taller, children laughed again. Some whispered he was a guardian sent by fate. Others said he was dangerous, a weapon that could turn against them at any moment. Fear still lived in their hearts, but so did hope, and for the first time, hope was stronger. At night, the Titan sat outside the colony's ruins, his eyes glowing faintly like twin embers. A young soldier approached him, shaking but brave enough to speak. "Why?" the soldier asked. "Why fight for us when your kind would call us weak?" The Titan tilted his head, the sound of metal grinding as he moved. His voice was slow, heavy. "Weakness is not here." He touched his chest. "Weakness is cruelty. They do not see. You do." The soldier did not understand all of his words, but he felt their weight. When he told the others, the story spread like fire. The Titan was not only a fighter, he was something more. He was a being who had chosen them, not because they were strong, but because they were different from everything he had known. But not all humans were ready to accept him. A meeting of officers was called in secret. Some argued he was a danger too great to ignore. What if his people returned for him? What if he turned his fury against them? They spoke of locking him away or abandoning him on the next barren world. Their fear grew louder than their gratitude. Alara listened, but said nothing at first. She looked at the faces of her crew, men and women who had survived only because of him. Then she spoke. "You call him a danger, but he saved your lives. You call him a monster, but he chose mercy when he could have chosen death. If you cannot see what he is becoming, then perhaps the monster is not him, it is us." Her words silenced the room, but she knew the doubt would not vanish so easily. The test came days later. Long-range sensors detected an enemy fleet approaching. Not raiders this time, but warships too many for the humans to face. The officers panicked, arguing they should flee and leave the colony behind. But the Titan rose, his shadow stretching across the command deck. His voice thundered. "They come. For me. Not you. I will stand." The humans froze. His people had returned. The ones who had abandoned him now sought to finish what they had started. He could have left, could have faced them alone in silence. But he looked at Alara, at the soldiers, at the colonists who watched from below. His voice shook the air. If I fall, I fall with you. If I rise with you. For the first time, the humans believed him without doubt. They armed their ships, prepared their defenses, and stood beside the Titan. The coming storm would test them all, but something had already changed. The alien Titan was no longer forsaken. He had a place, and he would defend it, even if it meant facing the fury of his own kind. The sky above the colony darkened as the enemy fleet arrived. Dozens of warships cut through the stars like blades of shadow, their engines burning with crimson fire. These were not raiders or scavengers. They were soldiers of the Titan's own kind, the empire that had cast him aside. Their ships dwarfed the human fleet, armored with black steel and weapons that could shatter moons. Against them, the human ships looked fragile, their shields flickering, their weapons weak. The crew knew what they faced. Death was almost certain. In the command chamber, Captain Alara gave her orders with a calm voice, though her heart beat like a drum. Every officer and soldier looked to her for guidance. Yet in the corner, towering above them all, stood the Titan. His glowing eyes burned brighter than ever, fixed on the enemy ships. He knew their designs, their tactics, their cruelty. He had once led them. Now he would face them as an enemy. The comes filled with a booming voice. It was a warlord of his people, clad in armor like living stone. You are nothing without us, the voice roared. You were cast out because you were weak. Surrender yourself, traitor, and we will let these fragile creatures live. The Titan stepped forward, his chest rising with every breath. His reply was short, each word like a strike of thunder. I am not weak. I am free. His voice echoed across the fleet. The humans trembled, but they felt something stir inside them. If he could defy an empire alone, then perhaps they too could resist. Alara ordered the fleet to hold formation. They would not abandon the Titan, no matter the odds. The first strike came sudden and brutal. Enemy fire lit the void, tearing through shields and shattering smaller vessels. Human crews screamed as hulls ruptured. The colony shook with the shockwaves. Yet the Titan moved before the humans could fall. He launched himself into the battlefield, leaping from a carrier bay with a roar that cut through the storm. His massive body collided with an enemy ship, claws digging deep into its armor. Sparks and flames burst as he ripped it apart with raw strength. The humans gasped in disbelief. He was a living weapon, tearing war machines apart with his bare hands. The enemy turned their fire on him, but the Titan's rage was unstoppable. Every blast struck his armor, searing his flesh beneath, yet he kept moving. He smashed one warship into another, their wreckage drifting like broken bones. The humans followed his lead, striking where he created openings. Their weak weapons found power in his fury, breaking enemy lines piece by piece. Still, the enemy fleet was too large. For every ship the Titan destroyed, more pressed forward. Human casualties mounted. Fear spread again through the ranks. Some shouted to retreat. Others begged Alara to escape while they still could. But she looked at the Titan, still fighting, his body bleeding light into the void. He did not retreat. He did not beg. He fought for them as though their survival was his own. Alara's voice cut through the chaos. We stand with him. Fire everything we have. The humans obeyed. They poured every missile, every laser, every ounce of strength into the fight. Side by side with the Titan, they struck with desperation and fury. The enemy warlord appeared at last, his massive flagship rising above the others like a black mountain. The Titan froze, his glowing eyes narrowing. This was no ordinary foe. This was the one who had commanded his exile, the one who had named him traitor. Their voices clashed across the void. You belong to us, the warlord growled. I belong to no one, the Titan thundered back. Their clash shook the battlefield. The Titan hurled himself at the flagship, striking with all his strength. The warlord met him with weapons forged to kill even titans. Fire and steel collided, shaking the stars themselves. The humans could only watch as their unlikely protector faced the monster of his own kind. For the first time, the alien titan was not fighting alone. Humanity fought with him, and together, they would decide if freedom could stand against an empire built on chains. The warlord's flagship loomed like a black mountain across the void. Its weapons blazed, cutting through human shields with brutal precision. Each blast sent shudders through the colony's fragile defenses. The humans fought back, but their weapons barely scratched its armor. Against such power, it seemed impossible to win. Yet the Titan did not falter. He hurled himself at the massive vessel, claws tearing through hull plating, each strike echoing with centuries of rage and betrayal. Inside the human flagship, Captain Ilara gripped the command rail as her ship shook under enemy fire. Her officers shouted reports of failing systems, burning decks, and rising casualties. Every voice carried fear, but when their eyes lifted to the view screen, they saw the Titan, a blazing figure striking blows no human could. His body was cracked and bleeding light, but he fought as if the universe itself demanded it. That sight gave them strength. Ilara raised her voice, steady and fierce. "We fight with him. Every ship, every gun, give him cover." The human fleet obeyed. They swarmed around the Titan like shields of fire, throwing themselves between him and the enemy. Their small ships darted through the battlefield, harassing larger foes, forcing the enemy to split their fire. Many of those ships never returned, but their sacrifice gave the Titan room to strike. He ripped through the warlord's escorts, scattering debris into the void. At last, the warlord himself appeared. His body was colossal, even larger than the Titan's, wrapped in armor of jagged obsidian and glowing crimson veins. His eyes burned like molten fire. When he spoke, his voice carried through comes and void alike. "You were born to serve. To question is weakness. To stand with them is shame." His words dripped with contempt, but also with fury. The Titan answered with a roar that shook every ship. "To serve without choice is death. I choose humanity." He leaped, colliding with the warlord in a clash that lit the stars. Their blows cracked metal. Their roars echoed across the battlefield. The warlord's strikes were precise and merciless, each one meant to break not only the Titan's body, but his spirit. Yet the Titan refused to yield. He fought with the strength of exile, with the fury of betrayal, and with the spark of something new hope. The humans could see the duel unfold, but they knew the Titan was being pushed to his limit. Every strike left him more battered, his armor shattered, his glowing blood staining the void. The warlord pressed his advantage, mocking him. "They will abandon you as we did. They will fear you. You will always be alone." The Titan's claws slipped for a moment. The warlord's massive blade pierced his side, light spilling out in torrents. Pain thundered through him, yet in that moment, he remembered the children on the colony who had smiled when they saw him. He remembered Ilara's voice, steady and unyielding. He remembered the humans who had fought beside him, even when they feared him. With a roar that split the void, he caught the warlord's blade with both hands and snapped it in two. The humans cheered, their voices rising across the coms. But the fight was not yet over. The warlord struck with his fists, each blow shaking the Titan's frame. Still the Titan stood. Ilara saw what had to be done. She opened coms to every ship in the fleet. "Aim for the flagship's core. Hit it with everything you have. He will not fall alone." Human ships formed a circle around the Titan's duel. They launched missiles, fired beams, poured every ounce of strength into the warlord's vessel. The flagship's shields flickered, cracked, and finally shattered. Fire spread across its hull. The warlord staggered, his power faltering. The Titan saw his chance. With one final roar, he drove his claws deep into the warlord's chest and tore him apart. The enemy fleet froze. Their leader was gone, their flagship burning. Without command, they scattered into the void. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of human cheers and the Titan's heavy breaths. His body was broken, his armor shattered, but he still stood. He turned toward the humans, his glowing eyes dim, but filled with something they had never seen before: pride. For the first time, the Titan had faced his own kind not as their weapon, but as their enemy. And he had won, not alone, but with humanity at his side. The battlefield was silent at last. Wreckage floated in the void, glowing embers fading into the endless dark. The warlord's flagship, once a symbol of terror, now drifted in ruins. Human ships circled carefully, their hulls scarred and broken, their crews exhausted but alive. For the first time, victory was theirs. Though the cost had been heavy. In the center of it all stood the Titan, towering above the wreckage, his body cracked and bleeding light. Each breath was heavy, his frame trembling with strain, yet he did not fall. Around him, human voices echoed across coms, not in fear, but in gratitude. Soldiers cheered his name. Colonists raised their hands in thanks. Children laughed through tears. The monster they had once feared now stood as their savior. Captain Alara descended from her ship to meet him on the colony's surface. The Titan's shadow stretched across the burned ground, but when his eyes met hers, he lowered his head in respect. She spoke softly, yet every word carried across the silence. You fought for us when no one else would. You stood when even your own kind turned against you. You are not forsaken anymore, the Titan's deep voice rumbled. I was cast out, but you gave me place. I fought. Not for empire, not for power. I fought for you. For humanity. His words were simple, broken, yet they held more truth than any speech. The humans listening felt a weight lift from their hearts. He was not their prisoner, nor their weapon. He was their ally. The following days were filled with rebuilding. The colony, once on the edge of destruction, began to rise again. Humans worked side by side with the Titan, his massive hands lifting wreckage as easily as a child lifts stone. Where machines failed, his strength carried the weight. Children followed him, unafraid now, offering him pieces of bread or flowers they had saved. The Titan did not understand these gifts at first, but he accepted them with care, holding them as though they were treasures. Some officers still whispered their doubts, but each day those voices grew quieter. The people no longer saw him as a danger. They saw him as one of their own. He was too large to walk among them unnoticed, too alien to ever fully belong, yet his presence gave them courage. When storms struck the colony, he shielded them. When raiders prowled at the edge of the system, he stood watch, and none dared attack. One evening, as the sun set over the scarred colony, Alara approached him once more. The sky burned orange, and the Titan's figure looked like a mountain against the light. She asked him what he would do now that his enemies had scattered. His answer came slow, but steady. I cannot return to them. I will not, here. I am not forsaken. Here, I have hope. His glowing eyes softened, no longer only filled with rage, but with something new. Alara nodded. Then stay. Fight with us. Live with us. Humanity will not cast you aside, and so the Titan remained. Not as a prisoner, not as a weapon, but as a guardian. He patrolled the skies above the colony, stood with the human fleet when they sailed into the stars, and became a symbol that echoed across human worlds. The story of the forsaken Titan spread quickly, an alien giant who had chosen humanity over his own empire. Where once people had seen only fear in his shadow, now they saw protection. Where once he had been a tool of cruelty, now he was a defender of the weak. He had been abandoned by all, but in humanity he had found something greater than strength. He had found trust, loyalty, and belonging. And though scars marked his body and betrayal marked his past, his future no longer felt empty. The Titan stood tall among the humans, No longer a forsaken warrior, but a living testament to a truth his people had never understood. Strength was not in cruelty. Strength was in standing for others, even when standing meant standing alone. At last, he was no longer alone.